The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on the Nova Society are those of our guests and panel members and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of any institution any member of the Nova Society is associated with. The material information presented on the Nova Society is for general information purposes only. Reproduction or dissemination for the purpose other than education is prohibited without express written consent of the Nova Society. We'd like to welcome everyone back to the Nova Society, and today our panel will be having a bit of a theoretical discussion. We were talking about who is actually electable to the presidency of the United States, keeping in mind that Joe Biden is only the second Catholic to be elected president of the United States. What will be next? Which barrier will be broken? Will it be the religious barrier, or will it be the gender barrier? Will we have next an elected woman president or an elected Jewish president? So let's listen in. Are we moving toward a theocracy?
Moving toward?
Yeah, well, yeah. I'm giving us Priscilla, I'm giving us a little bit of the benefit of the doubt here. We could move a lot farther toward. I don't think the majority of Americans are theocrats. I think it's a very small minority. The problem is that it's the old adage, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. They're the ones that talk the loudest and talk the most. Those are the ones that you hear.
Well, I think one of the challenges in particular with American politics is historically, America's never really fully settled on its relationship to its choice religion. So while the founding fathers did write this whole concept of like separation of church and state, and some folks are like, hey, separation of church and state, that's never really been properly enforced because of the way our country was founded on principles of religious freedom. Like if we were just, colonizers out for gold, no, I was going to say maybe we wouldn't have developed that way, but no, look at all of South America. No, it would have happened. But, I think it's a very real thing that we haven't reckoned with. I think on census statistics, it's very safe to say it's, the largest majority of Americans do not subscribe to some sort of religious persuasion that would lead them into a theocracy. However, it's so embedded in the American narrative that I don't even know if people can properly differentiate religion from politics.
Oh, that's true. And you're right. I mean, it's supposed to be separation of church and state. However, every office holder takes the oath on the Bible. Every one of them. The Senate and the House of Representatives have their pastors, and those pastors come in and have an invocation before the start of most of the sessions there. So they're really, when we're talking about church and state, it's a little tough. Now, can you imagine if a president of the United States, once again, took the oath and took it on the Quran? They would lose their minds. Or took it on the Torah. They would lose their minds.
If we can even get folks of those religious persuasions elected, which I think is the other part of the problem. I think that the country leans toward very specific demographics in their president, and it's usually somebody who resonates with white Christian values. Barack Obama was a bit of an anomaly, but Barack Obama knew how to get the support of the right people to vote. But, for them, and then Trump again is another anomaly, but looking at all of the previous presidents, they fit a very specific trope. And you're looking at the candidates who didn't, for various reasons. They were women. They gave off vibes of being not Christian. They, these folks who don't get elected, they don't meet it. Even if they're the nicest, sweetest, most sane people, they just don't meet the trope of the white Christian male leader.
Right.
So what do
No,
you? So
Biden's only the second Catholic president.
That's right. That is true. I mean,
If I got sworn in, it would be on the Catch-22 and a stack of other books that I love so much that have guided me in my life.
And a VHS tape of Blazing Saddles. That have to.
There'd be a few movies there, but yeah, Blazing Saddles might be in there.
I figured you were going to say, the
It's like
last 10
Annie
years
Hall.
of Mad Magazine or something. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, it is. It's an interesting thing. So I'm going to ask the question: what gets elected? Thinking a little bit to the future, what gets elected first? A female president or a Jewish president?
Elected?
Yeah,
because we may have a female president.
We may, but an elected. Now let's remember, in the Supreme Court, they broke the religious barrier before they broke the gender barrier.
Of course, yeah.
Do you believe that that'll be the case with the United States? And just think about how many women have run. And really the only Jewish guy that was out there running was Joe Lieberman. And of course,
president.
Right, but he ran for vice president. And I'm talking about somebody being president, Bernie Sanders.
Yep.
Bernie Sanders.
I think the first Jewish president will be J.B. Pritzker of Illinois. I believe
really?
He's Jewish. And I believe he will be president.
Now, will he get there before a woman does?
Well, unless Kamala gets there first.
I don't think Kamala could get elected. I think she'll only get president. Yeah, she'll only get president by her president dying.
Right.
Because she doesn't have enough love of women. And I think one of the challenges of the women candidates is there are some really dynamic women politicians. But inevitably, as soon as someone gets to the head of the pack and they get into, we've seen it with Hillary, we're going to see it with Nikki, we saw it with Sarah Palin. It stops ever being about the politics as soon as she hits the stage. And so, I don't think we're at a place yet where we can, as a general populace, vote for women. I think the bias there is so strong that we can't even hear the women's argument. We just, hear screeching women and then complain about her pantsuits because as a country, we don't know what to do with women. I think it's more likely that we'll get a Jewish president before we get elected, by the way, Jewish president before we get to woman president. But what I'm waiting for is the Gen Xer before we get another boomer, but waiting for that.
Well, that's a point.
I just want to point out that Hillary Clinton did win the popular vote. And
yes.
so there is that. I mean, she got 3 million more votes than the other guy. And it's just that those votes weren't necessarily all in the right place that brought Trump to the presidency. But enough people liked her apparently to make her the winner of the popular vote.
Well, it was her or the other guy, so
Yeah. 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 And to be honest, again, it goes back to the old adage that, some people vote for a person, most people vote against somebody. And so, that could be the factor there. But then there's another thing. Brooklyn, what do you think? Jewish or woman first?
Yeah, that's a very good question. But I've been thinking about the, I don't know, we've got the control, the increasing control now of women, and women's reproductive rights, as we were just speaking, and a lot more, it seems to me, of what women should be doing, and of what we were saying, I don't remember when it was, before the one Republican gentleman who happened to be African American or Black, saying that there should be one vote per household and that should belong to the man. So I see increasing discrimination on the part of the right toward women, and at the same time, I see increasing discrimination toward Jewish people and other people. So I just see increasing discrimination across the board, really, toward others who are not the far right, whatever one considers the standard American. I would like to say that we'll see a woman first.
Okay.
51% of the population is women, right?
That's correct.
Less than 2% of the population is Jewish.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
Except the Jewish folks have a lot. So I was a Bernie person.
Mhm.
Completely.
Why did I know
shameless.
that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably because you have me so well pegged.
Yeah. I know.
But I was a Bernie person, and the thing that got me about Bernie is that he was speaking the messages that, as a constituent, I wanted my politicians to say. There have only been a couple other women in particular, like Elizabeth Warren, who've gotten anywhere close to saying similar things as Bernie. Hillary, while she won popular vote, she won because it was her or the other guy, but she's so well establishment at this point that it's like, I don't think anyone actually really wants Hillary as president. They want someone who's new and exciting, which is how the other guy got elected at the end of the day. Somebody who's new and exciting, who's going to drain the swamp and do all these really cool things, except, as all lies, and, folks can't
No.
really use their critical thinking skills very well. But there aren't too many women that I see my peers rallying behind. And so it's like, it would have to be the right woman. And I don't know that the right woman is there yet.
right.
Elizabeth Warren, while definitely gets a lot of points in my book, is still an older woman.
Yep.
Someone like AOC, who is she's a firecracker and can totally get shit done, also brings ethnicity into it. So then now we get to have a
Right.
whole different conversation if she's even electable, if she were to even run. I mean, that's the other thing. I don't even know if she's eligible yet. I don't think she's old enough, or maybe she just now got old enough. I don't know, but I think that I would like to see a woman president. We
Oh, definitely.
enough of the world has had women leaders, and those women have turned the country around. It would be really smart to have a woman president. We just don't have the right women yet.
Yeah, that's great. I think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is 34.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know when she turns 35, but I think she's 34. So she's just too young. Now, whether she would run or not, I don't know. How electable is she may be or not, I have no idea.
I think she's polarizing as far as, she's a little too progressive. She's too polarizing. And Scott and I, when we were talking before about last year, I'm a big fan of Amy Klobuchar. I think Klobuchar is a very, she's not an Ocasio-Cortez who can be extremely divisive because of her views. And she's got she's got a little bit of that common sense, just down the middle, moderate kind of attitude about her. Another one that I like is Porter from her and her whiteboard. She's kind of Bernie Sanders, not Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders with a whiteboard is what she really comes down to be.
She was an Elizabeth Warren student.
Oh, was she? I did not know that. I did not know.
At Harvard, yeah. I like Tammy Duckworth.
Okay.
Very much.
Tammy, and I mean, kind of surprising, Priscilla, that none of your peers even think about these people.
Nope. I mean, there's some. There is one person in particular whose name is escaping me, and I don't remember if any of you said it, who usually runs as a Green Party. And so number of my folks support her. What they like about someone like AOC is she polarizing, yes, but she's also standing up to the bullies. And I think that's really kind of the thing that resonates with the younger voters, is they don't like the bullies. They don't like the way that political maneuvering is essentially bullying groups of people. And those politicians who are willing to stand up, whether for the good of the people or not, they're taking the stance of, you're doing harm to people, and that's not okay. Those are the people that younger voters they tend to drift toward. And if you have somebody who's disingenuous like Trump, who has very clear evidence of actually doing harm to people, not just saying they will or will not do harm to people, can sniff that out and call bullshit.
Well, so I used to live in that district that AOC represents a long time ago. The congressman had been there, it seemed forever. She was able to oust him, which was, I think a good sign of progress in the district. Would like to see her run for some kind of citywide or maybe statewide office before we start electing a president. I think it's real dangerous to think of a person who can represent a district as being representing anything more than that until they actually do that. I don't think she would fare too well in a statewide election at the moment, but it's possible with a little seasoning that she could. There are other, Kathy Hochul is the current governor of New York, and she hasn't actually been mentioned too much as a potential national nominee from what I've heard. There have been.
You know how popular she is here. Sorry, I know I interrupted you. I think she's fine. But I know a bunch of people were disappointed, like people in my family, for example, were disappointed in her performance.
Yeah, I mean, I think New York is going okay, so I don't really see that she's doing anything wrong, certainly. But,
no,
again, she does. Whitmer. Yeah, and I love Gretchen Whitmer. I think she's terrific. Again, I'm going to go back to Kamala Harris. I think Kamala Harris, here's one thing that's a misconception about Kamala Harris, that she was the border czar. She's not the border. She was never intended to be the border czar. She took on the mission of going to the Northern Triangle countries in Central America to work out ways to prevent them from wanting to leave their countries to come here. And she was successful at that. Most of the illegal immigrants who were showing up at the border are not from those countries or Mexico. They're from all over the place. They're from Venezuela, and they're from China, and they're from Kazakhstan, and they're from Ukraine, and they're from Russia, and they're from Africa. So Kamala Harris was successful in the mission that she had to keep those countries, the people in those countries who want to come here, applying legally to come here. And so the one thing that she gets killed for all the time, at least by Republicans, and nobody really talks about it on the other side, is that she was the border czar, and the border is still a mess. But
what's so funny about that is that we were just a few minutes ago talking about pro-Russian stance, and yet we're using czar in the negative here.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. It's always the negative, but I guess that was a weird naming of somebody who's like in charge of one thing. The drug czar, the climate czar, all that. The good old days of the czar. Drove my family out of that area. So.
Yeah. I mean, yeah,
I necessarily have the most positive implications for me, but whatever.
Yeah, didn't do much for Linda's family either. I do like Gretchen Whitmer. I like Whitmer. I think she's fine. But again, I'm a bit, for some reason, I don't know what it is, I'm a Klobuchar fan. I really do think she would do well. AOC, I agree with Scott, needs a lot more seasoning, needs to be a statewide office, show she's got the ability to actually manage. Because let's face it, the President of the United States, you better be a good administrator. I mean, that really is your function, is to be an administrator. And firebrands are just not that. And when we speak about Kamala Harris, the thing to remember is the last vice president that won after his president stopped, was not allowed to run, was Bush 1. And that was almost 40 years ago, almost 35.
Yeah, vice presidents aren't well thought of, generally
No.
speaking.
No, it in many ways, it's the kiss of death. It is the kiss of death to your political career as far as going forward. You're just going to go to a lot of places and, speak a lot, and you're going to get invited to rubber chicken dinners a lot, and that's where you're going to be for the rest of your life.
Right, and take some meetings, represent the president when he can't be there. Go to
Right.
England and be there for that and this and that. But actually, George Will had a bizarre column today where he compares, I guess, implicitly compares Henry Wallace and Kamala Harris, and said that one of the things that Truman did, FDR did, I'm sorry, very smart, was replace Wallace with Truman in his last election. And that had he not done that, it would have been a disaster for the country, because Wallace was such a pro-Soviet. And all the people that worked under Wallace at the State Department, I think he had been originally the Agriculture Department, but then he moved to the State Department after FDR sort of deposed him and brought Truman in to be the VP. He gave him he gave him commerce, and Alger Hiss and a bunch of other names that have become associated with late 1940s communism were all members of his staff. But I don't actually see what the analogy is. It's just it was like George Will sort of showing off that he knows who the vice president under FDR was.
Yeah, probably.
As there's no comparison to Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is popular with young people, should be more popular probably with women, and should be more popular with African Americans, probably is very popular with black women, but not so much with black men. Hispanic men, I've mentioned before, are very, very anti woman leader. And that's a big problem with the voting bloc. But the Democrats are going to lose the Hispanic vote anyway, because Trump's friends bought up all the Hispanic media, like Univision, remember, was such a thorn in his side back in 2016. That company was bought by a friend of his who has put on very pro-Trump advertising and stories, and replaced that reporter whose name I can't remember, who was the one who he had thrown out of the rally for being a nasty man and asking him tough questions. So that guy's no longer, has a job working for Univision, and that's where most Hispanics get their news from, I guess, is Spanish-speaking, American television. So, Trump has grabbed onto that media, following the example of Viktor Orban in Hungary, that if you have rich friends and they want to buy something, buying up your worst media rivals is not a bad way for them to go.
Good investment. Very good investment. All right. So I'm going to say that Jewish will come first before female.
But who? You got to give me a name.
I got to give you somebody?
Yeah, I gave a name, Pritzker.
Yeah, I know you did. I don't think Bernie. I think Bernie's out from now on.
Bernie's older than these guys.
Well, yeah. I don't see him. I can't really put my finger on who. I mean, again, if I was to say female, I would say Klobuchar, or would be Klobuchar. But I guess when I look at politicians, I don't really divide them out by their religion. As you point out, yes, Biden's Catholic, second Catholic ever elected, which is absolutely surprising to me with the number of Catholics we have in the United States.
But not when you think about our Protestant world and how Protestants don't even acknowledge Catholics as Christians in American Protestantism. But also, if you look at fraternal organizations, for instance, Catholics were barred from Freemasonry for ages. And
yes.
And a lot of how so much of our political roots you can tag back into Freemasonry. So it's like, I think it's not surprising we haven't had more Catholics.
Well, and actually, that was one of the reasons that the Knights of Columbus was formed back in the 1870s as an answer to Freemasonry. And for years and years and years, there was this thing put out that said that the Knights of Columbus and the Masons as well took an oath to eliminate the other. Now, there's been absolutely, that is so untrue. I'm a fourth degree member of the Knights of Columbus, and I've never even heard of such a thing. But okay. But the fact is that the divide. Whenever I look at politicians, I don't look at the religion that they're in as much as I look at, are they the crazy right, or are they the crazy left, or are they the moderate? I guess probably one of the more, and I doubt that he would ever run, Chuck Schumer.
Not
Oh,
right.
please no.
But
No.
I don't think you're ever going to get. I don't think he would ever run.
To establishment. We're tired of him.
Yeah, if you look at the list of Jewish Democrats in the House, Jerry Nadler's out. He wouldn't. So all right, I will give you one. Jamie Raskin. I'm going to say Jamie Raskin.
Oh, Jamie Raskin. Oh,
Jamie
okay.
Raskin. Yeah, Jamie. I'm going to say of all of them, or, and this would be a surprise, Adam Schiff.
Mhm.
If you're going to take it from an establishment. Now, as far as in state houses, I'm not up on, I don't know how many Jewish governors we have. I don't think, do we have any?
Well, I just said J.B. Pritzker, I believe is Jewish. I'm not 100% sure.
But you go through the Jewish senators, Blumenthal of Connecticut, Feinstein's
And J.B.
dead.
Pritzker, by the way, is not yet 60 years old.
He's not.
He's still fairly young. As a
I don't think
politician, so-
Raskin is either.
Yeah, I don't know how.
I don't think Raskin's either. He just got over the cancer, beat the cancer. He's well spoken, and I think that he comes from Maryland, so I think that would be a good point. Maybe get him and somebody else involved into it. Definitely not Debbie Wasserman Schultz. That sure as heck isn't going to happen. But I'm going to say Jewish before female, and I think that if Biden wins the second term, and if Kamala Harris is his running mate, which I believe that she will be, and if something was to happen to Biden and she became president by default, I think that the future of a woman president would be decided in the amount of years that she holds the presidency. It will either be a great windfall for women, and then in which case my decision would be totally opposite. I'd say women might come first, or if they don't think she does a good job, you might not see a woman in the White House for a century, because that's just kind of the way we roll. All right, guys, that's all the time we got for today. I have to go and take my wife to her anniversary dinner.
After you get your haircut.
That's right. Got to get my hair cut first because she told me I had to. Yes, and I do as I'm told. Well, this was good. So that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this week's episode, the Phoenix Research Group, an independent research consortium offering social issue solutions to NGOs and international government agencies through multidisciplinary, nonpartisan, and unbiased research. We'd also like to thank our podcast partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing partners, Podkite, who does all our analytics, iHeartRadio, where people get their music and podcasts, Apple iTunes, the largest source of music and podcasts on the internet, Spotify, the most popular source for the Nova Society. The Nova Society is available on all these and other quality platforms mentioned in our description. We'd like to thank our listeners. Without you, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a comment, a question, or would like to be a guest on the Nova Society, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. Always remember, the power of society is knowledge. So for Dr. Scott Gershworth, Dr. Priscilla Hobbs, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, and all of us here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Be well, and we hope to see you again next time.